Oh my God, dude, it's overfull.
You ready for this one, Mandy? It's been damn near 2 weeks since we pulled those pots. So hopefully there's crab in these pots. Hopefully they didn't crawl out. Hopefully there's no holes. Hopefully there's no sand fleas that are eating the crab. Scare me here. Although it does.
Throw like a damn hero.
Give it all you got!
In the wild and unpredictable Bering Sea, fishermen face danger every day as they strive to make a living. This thrilling reality TV series immerses viewers in the intense world of these brave adventurers, where each moment brings fresh risks. Despite the harsh conditions, the crews bravely navigate their vessels in search of valuable catches. Sometimes, amidst the chaos, they hit the jackpot, hauling in massive crabs or enormous halibut. These awe-inspiring moments highlight the incredible abundance of nature in the untamed seas. Join us as we explore the most exhilarating jackpot moments on Deadliest Catch, the dangerous gamble. On the Bering Sea, the captains of the Saga and Brenna decided to join each other for a fishing expedition. When the first pot is pulled in, it is filled with crabs, making them hit the jackpot instantly. But Jake thinks they might be walking into an ice field, which could be quite difficult if they're not very careful. Jake thinks he has to take the risk, or he might have to stay on the sea longer, and that means he cannot pay his bills. With Jake's order, the deckhands dumped the pots into the shallow part of the water, and their best fishing captain, Jake, drove all his gear back into the ledge, and instead of finding another ground, Jake decides to take this risky bet that could generate a great return. Jake admits that he's afraid because one of those pots they use for fishing costs over $2,000, and one minor mistake could cost them the entire season. The pots hauled in were filled with crab, making him think his decision was right. With Captain Sean Dwyer of the Brenna fishing boat keeping an eye on him, Jake can at least rest a little, knowing that if things go wrong, he can rely on his help. Since they could lose their gear, Jake and Sean immediately ordered their deckhands to retrieve it. Despite how risky the gamble was, both crews were still able to get their hands on big rewards if only they had enough time and the weather was good. Also, with the dangers associated with the gamble, the captain will probably never try it again. Jake admits he was greedy, but the catch was great. The god of fishing is always around the Saga vessel, because this time they were really blessed. The team finally strikes gold. Once again, the Saga and its crew find themselves in a difficult situation as they battle with the heavy current from the storm. Jake got a call from Lenny warning him about the weather at the moment, but Jake thinks they are doing fine and will be safe. After ending the call, Captain Jake decides to take his chances rather than go back to land. Captain Jake knows how dangerous the weather is, but he has a hunch that there are a lot of crabs where they are at the moment, so turning back will be a huge loss on his side. Once the pots are released into the water, they wait for the result, hoping it comes back fruitful. In the general run of things, the part of the sea that Jake is fishing from is only allowed for the bigger boats, which have a chance of surviving the dangerous weather and its waves, but Jake's boat at the moment is very small, making it hard for him and his crew. As the first pot is reeled in, the whole crew, including their captain, is shocked to see so many crabs in one pot in less than 8 hours. In just 8 hours, the Saga has managed to get more crabs than they would in a longer time frame, making this a game changer for the Saga since they still have more pots to reel in. Excitedly, Jake asked the crew for the number of crabs in the pots, and it turned out to be 435 in total. The second pot reeled in even more than the former, counting 507 in the second pot. Jake is delighted that they don't have to do the extra cleaning because the crabs came out clean from the water. With pots after pots full, Jake admits that moment is the best he has ever fished. This time, the Saga saves itself a whole lot of money. Another jackpot. For the well-deserving crew. It's a normal day at sea for the Saga ship to fish, but all their pots are coming back empty. Captain Jake is worried about how to make the offload, thinking about his expenses after the next empty pot. He is forced to arrange an extra offload, which will cost him an extra $10,000 in food, fuel, and the saga pink slip. Jake, losing patience, signals to the newest member of the crew, Cheyenne, his cousin, to double up while she's working on the pots, making another crew member take it up from her. Captain Jake thinks he needs to fish deeper in order to catch more fish. Because his great-grandfather used to fish in the strait, he thinks that's where he could get his hands on some fish, but hitting the strait is easier said than done. Still far away from his target, Captain Jake needs his great-grandfather old spot to really be that spot, or else that could be the end of the saga. Getting to the stables means it is time to produce, and the crew is ready for what's about to come. The deckhands reeled in the pot they had let into the water earlier on, and it was filled with fish, making the whole crew excited. Jake was excited, but he thinks they could get more fish out of that area, and then the next pot came out of the water more filled than the previous fish. This makes Captain Jake really happy, thanking his great-grandfather for the catch, hoping his cousin Cheyenne could land the next pot. Jake encouraged her, which landed them another pot full of fish, hitting the jackpot and saving them $10,000. With a lot of determination, this next crew landed one of their biggest catches of the season. Wizard crew catches $282,000 worth of crab. Despite gear troubles, the Wizard team is eager to hit their crab target after the first pot they pulled up was full of crabs. This thrilled the crew. They dropped the second pot in the sea and it too came up full of crabs. The whole team beamed with joy. The weather began to shift, and Jacob secured the pots well so they'd be safe. The weather might turn bad soon, and if the pots aren't tied well, they could end up in the sea, or worse, hurt someone. As expected, the weather changed for the worse, so Keith told the crew to move the pots to a different place to be safer. But it has been tied down well by Jacob. The crew went back to fishing for crabs, and luckily, they kept getting pots full. It seemed like their lucky day because they had passed their target with tanks, brimming with a total of 170 pot stacks. Captain Keith fights for a safe dock, and 45 knot winds. With over a month of effort on the sea, Captain Keith bags 50,000 pawns and $282,000 worth of crab, earning each deckhand $15,000. On the northwestern ship, just 2 weeks after the electrical disaster, Captain Sig is determined to make it back to sea, but not before fixing the electrical panel. Northwestern catches. Huge 700 pounds crab. A few weeks ago, in the middle of their best fishing of the season, Sig faced his worst nightmare. The boat caught fire in the engine room, putting them in a critical moment at sea, but now Sig has gotten a new electrical panel to get the boat rounding again. Captain Sig Hansen inspects the newly repaired electrical panel, making sure there are no faults anywhere. He hopes these panels will get them through the season so they can finish what they started. But now the only problem left before the vessel can return to water is getting the ship to start and checking if the equipment is still functioning well after not being used for a while. When tested, the Northwestern is finally back to the sea after being closed down for more than a week. With his catch being in the pots for too long, Captain Sig is worried about the condition the crabs will be in. Something might be wrong or they might be eaten by other sea creatures. Just as the crew were about to pull a pot out, a deckhand informed Sig about a leak from a hose from the coiler, bringing out another issue. Hoping it could get fixed sooner because a coiler makes their job easier since it is attached to the ropes that reel in the catch. After fixing it, the crew resumed getting their pots out of the water. With their first pot out, Sig worries were reduced immediately because the pots were full and the crabs were still alive and clean. With pots after pots out, the crabs remained clean even after staying in the pots for more than a week, as if they had just been fished out of the ocean. Captain Sig is thankful because he's been stressed about being behind the ball since the vessel caught fire. And with this catch, he and the crew could really get back on their feet. Even with terrible weather on his hands, Captain Keith Colburn fought his way to the top of the strings, finishing the season with mighty 434,000 pounds of crab. Captain Keith has been battling bad luck the entire season, and he's hoping to change his luck with this catch. With about 50 pots to reel in, Captain Keith is hoping to get about $70,000 to $75,000 pounds. The first pot out of the water impressed Keith a lot, with the pot containing 355 crabs, making the whole crew more motivated to work harder than before. But the Bering Sea is not willing to give up its crabs without making Keith and his crew work for them, with a strong current generating immense downward pressure on the pots. But the crew is giving their all to push through with the weather and hauling in the pots, even though it's not easy at all. With the pot in, Keith aims for a bigger count this time, and he's relieved as the count did come up as high as 320. The next pot is about to come out, and Keith hopes the crew will be able to bring it in without any hassle, but with the weather not cooperating, it is harder than usual for the crew. The next pot comes out with 350 crabs in it, making the total of their catch 980 crabs. But the wizard crew is not done yet, with more pots coming out of the water and adding more crabs to the one on board. After 6 weeks of dangerous weather on the sea and the worst trip of his Captain Keith's entire career, the crew was able to haul 434,000 pounds of crabs, making it a total of $1.7 million, giving the crew $54,000 each. It's really not how one starts the game, but how well the game is ended, and the wizard crew makes sure they end really well. With a novice on board, the captain decides to test her knowledge, which results in a massive return. The $1.8 million jackpot. On the Northwestern, after weeks of intense training, Mandy was facing a crucial moment. It was make or break time, as her skills would determine whether the crew's hard work during the winter would pay off or end in disappointment. The first catch looked promising, and everyone was hopeful for an even better and bigger haul. As her father, who was also the captain, suggested they stack up, Mandy stepped up, and they were rewarded for their efforts. About 568 miles southeast in Kingsport, Alaska, the crew of the Cornelia Marie had to stay put in one spot at sea. However, when they discovered dead crabs in their holding tank, they were forced to make a 170-mile journey to a different processing location. The crew was really eager to check out the crabs, which were worth around $1 million. So Josh, Casey, and the rest of the crew headed over to see how the crabs were doing. The crabs were healthy and good-looking. It was literally the most crabs they've caught in over a decade, and for the first time, all 6 boats, the Cornelia Marie, the Determined, the Wizard, the Southern Wind, the Brenna, and the Northwestern, had their 6 tanks stacked and filled up with crabs. During the Opelio season on the Cornelia Marie, the crew managed to catch a total of 350,000 crabs. These crabs weighed about 157,757 kilograms and were valued at approximately $1,230,000. After all the hard work, each crew member ended up with a share of about $64,625. Throughout the autumn and winter seasons, the captains and crews took on significant risks while out at sea, all for the sake of catching wild Alaskan king Opelio crabs. In total, their efforts resulted in a whopping $165 million worth of crabs. On the Wizard Opelio, they had a total of 1,210,314, which had a value of $3,697,036, and each crew member had a share of $93,000 each. On the Southern Wind Opelio, they had a total catch of $250,000, which was worth $1,000, and each crew member had a share of $33,000 each. The Brenna Opelio had a total catch of 330,000 crabs, which was worth $1,075,036, and each crew member had a share of $45,000 each. The Northwestern Opelio had a total of 475,000 crabs, which was worth $1,800,000, and each crew member had a share of $63,000 each. This captain went from struggling to make his quota to earning massive amounts of crabs. The $1 million discovery, Captain Keith Colburn and his crew were really struggling to meet their $250,000 quota of Bairdi crab. They'd only managed to bring in a quarter of their target catch from the tanks, and Keith knew they had to act fast. With their pots coming back empty, he realized the crab hotspot had probably moved, leaving them stranded far out in the open waters without a reliable source of crabs. Determined not to return home empty-handed, Keith decided to do a thorough check of the tanks to assess the situation. Keith called Monty, the relief captain, to take over the helm while he checked the tanks. After inspecting the tanks and their contents thoroughly, Keith returned to the bridge with a new plan in mind. He had spotted a potential new hotspot for the crabs based on his observations. Excitedly, Keith shared his findings with the crew, and they changed course for the new location, hoping to improve their luck and catch the remaining 3/4 of their lucrative quota before time ran out. The captain was still trying to find the best spot for fishing, so he decided to start from the bottom of the ocean and work their way up until they found the ideal location. He instructed the rest of the crew to set off the fishing pots in 3/4 of a mile, letting them know that they would have the best chances of catching fish there. After observing the remaining deckhands struggling to achieve their goal, the captain acknowledged that the workload had been too much for them to handle alone. He called for a simple gathering and informed the crew that they needed additional hands on deck. As a result, he reinstated the previously fired deckhand to work again. Keith told Jacob that if he wanted to continue working on the ship, he had to start listening to his orders. Jacob accepted his mistake and apologized to Keith and the crew, asking if he could help the guys out. Keith accepted his apology, and the whole crew resumed fishing once more. Keith hopes Jacob can do what he asked of him because a member can only get 3 strikes to be fired, and he already has 2. He hopes he becomes a member of the Wizard. Jacob decided to make a change and join the crew. The entire team returned to fishing at the spot Keith said would be their best location for working together. They offloaded the largest group of crabs they had seen all season, with an impressive count of 234 crabs. The whole crew felt delighted with the excellent result. Keith felt very satisfied with the abundant catch. He felt especially happy that Jacob made the right choice to collaborate with the crew. Keith believed teamwork and not working alone were the keys to success. Working together as a team is the only way they can accomplish their goals and thrive. Truly, some of the catch on Deadliest Catches are awesome, but sometimes they face immense danger that puts their life at risk. The terrifying wave. One of the scariest and most unforgettable moments in Sig Hansen's career happened in 2013, during a paleo crab season. Sig and his crew were out fishing in the Bering Sea, and they ran into some of the most extreme weather they'd ever experienced. The winds were howling at over 60 knots, and the boat was getting tossed around by massive waves. Sig was doing his best to keep the Northwestern steady and safe, but he knew that each wave could pose a serious danger. The tough part was deciding whether to confront the wave head-on or to maneuver alongside it, risking the boat flipping over. One huge wave really surprised Sig. He couldn't do anything. The wave hit the boat, lifted it, and twisted it. It was so strong that it bent the railings and broke the windows. Sig and his crew were shocked, but not hurt. The Northwestern ferry survived, but was damaged. Sig went back to port and ended the season early, saying he had avoided danger. This time, Sig Hansen and his crew showed courage, resilience, and the dangers and unpredictability of the Bering Sea. Having been in the Sig family since 1977 and demonstrating the strength and durability that have weathered many storms and challenges, the Northwestern is more than just a boat. It's an asset, a symbol, and a home for Sig and his employees. The waves were bent but unbroken, and they would continue to sail and fish for many seasons. The Northwest waves were not the only time Sig Hansen and his crew faced life-threatening conditions in the Bering Sea. Sig has had many close calls and near-death experiences throughout his career, including some on camera on the Deadliest Catch team. Here are the most shocking and amazing moments of Sig Hansen. Here are some of the survivors. During the 2005 king crab season, Sig and his crew were fishing in the middle of a storm with winds over 100 knots and waves over 40 feet high when the Northwest lost control and crashed hard on the rocks. Sig had to use his engine and rudder to avoid capsizing. He had to deal with an engine room fire, an overturned crane, and nasty waves knocking him off his feet. He could only finish the season at the helm, but it was one of the most awesome moments of his life. Again, during the 2010 Opilio crab season, Sig and his crew were fishing in the thick ice covering the sea. The ice was coming from the northwest, pulling and threatening to capsize the boat. In response, Sig immediately had to find a way out of the ice, but dealt with major issues such as a radar malfunction, a frozen propeller, and a crew member falling into the sea. Sig was able to rescue the crew member, save him from the ice, and turn on the water. It was a close call that could have ended in trouble. During the 2016 crab fishing season, Sig and his team were out at sea in the cold winter. The seas were wild, and it was freezing. Sig felt sick, but kept working. He started to feel pain in his chest and arm, but thought it was from not eating well and being tired. He decided to rest in his room, but then fell to the floor. He had a heart attack and needed to go to the hospital fast. He was flown to a hospital in Anchorage, had surgery, and got better soon. He was lucky to make it, and he knew he had to take better care of his health from then on. These times showed the courage and resilience of Sig Hansen and his crew, as well as the danger and uncertainty of the Bering Sea. They also showed the kind side of Sig Hansen, a man who loved his job, family, and boat, regardless of his weaknesses. This shows that Sig Hansen is not just a superhero, but a real person who faces challenges and dangers like any regular person. He is also a survivor, overcoming many obstacles and hardships to earn his place as one of the greatest captains in crab fishing history. However, the Northwest waves were not the only time Sig Hansen and his crew faced life-threatening conditions in the Bering Sea. Sig has had many close calls and near-death experiences throughout his career, including some on camera on the Deadliest Catch team. Here are the most shocking and amazing moments of Sig Hansen. Here are some of the survivors. During the 2019 king crab season, Sig and his team were out at sea in bad weather when a huge wave hit their boat, the Northwest, and filled the deck with water. The force was so strong that it ripped off the hull cover, leaving the catch open to the storm. Quickly, Sig had to use a tarp and rope to cover the crab area before the water could ruin the catch or sink them. He also had to fix a broken pump, stop leaks, and help a crew member hurt by flying bits. Sig managed to get the boat and gear safe, but it was a risky moment that showed how dangerous the sea can be. These times prove Sig Hansen and his team's bravery and strength, as well as the risks of the Bering Sea. They also show Sig Hansen as a real person, not just a tough sea captain. He loves his job, his family, and his boat, but he's not perfect. Yet he's a fighter, facing and getting through many tough spots to be seen as one of the top crab boat captains out there. Sometimes the problems at sea become extremely dangerous for the crew. Surviving the ocean rage. The icy seas of the Bering Sea are known for their wild waves and harsh winds. In this tense moment from Deadliest Catch, Captain Keith Colburn and his team on the Wizard face a tough spot. The scene starts with huge 25-foot waves hitting the boat and strong 40-knot winds trying to knock them off track. Even with the hard weather, Captain Keith is set on getting the crab traps and hitting his goal. With a strong will, Captain Keith trusts his plan for where the traps are, thinking it will lead to a good and safe haul. He makes a brave choice. He steers the ship to face the wind side on, using the big wave on the left as a shield. This smart move lets the Wizard move ahead through the wild sea while keeping the danger of the big waves at bay. As the ship moves through the rough water, Captain Keith and his team work hard to pull in the traps, driven by the hope of a big catch. The crew members' brilliant tactic allows their boat to effortlessly glide along the line of crab pots as they haul them in, ensuring everyone's safety and the continuation of their fishing operations. These daring individuals are fearless, expressing their excitement and enthusiasm with big smiles and cheers as they approach the first pot. Captain Keith skillfully lets the 155-foot vessel be carried towards the bay by strong gusts of wind, making a risky but well-calculated decision to cooperate with the powerful forces of the vast ocean rather than resisting them in a futile battle. They successfully retrieve the first crab pot with ease, and the crew's excitement and positivity are truly evident and contagious as they move on to the next pot. Despite the challenging circumstances of unpredictable winds and waves, they collaborate seamlessly as a team and rapidly stack the heavy crab pots onto the deck with impressive efficiency. Their camaraderie, determination, and problem-solving skills are truly remarkable, allowing them to overcome any obstacle that comes their way with unwavering resilience and a can-do attitude. Even though the weather was bad, the crew never lost their pace. In contrast, the big waves clapped the deck time after time, making a mess and pushing people in harm's way. The crew does not step back from the waves, and even at this desperate moment, it continues to work. However, the captain of the crew understands that the risk is no longer worth it at such times. As the waves grow even bigger and more violent, Captain Keith is forced to give up their invested effort. The safety of the crew was the most important thing, and he knew that continuing in these bad conditions would be very risky. It was a disappointing moment, but keeping the crew safe was the top priority. What do you think about these insane catches? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more interesting videos. Thanks for watching.